right, we're recording. Here we go.
Here we go.
Hi, my name's Michelle. I'm one of the to-do collaborators, and today we're going to learn how to make this spiffy apron
Or this.
out of your old blue jeans, or that. Yeah, we got a bunch of them. I'm trying to teach this so that we don't have to leave the house, that we can use everything that we already just have hanging around. So here we go on some of these. And if you have questions, type it into the chat, or if you would please mute yourself right now, we'll mute, and then you can hold down the space bar and ask your question. So I've made like 100 of these things, but I haven't taught it before. So it's all gonna be, we're just winging it here, but it'll be fun. Okay, so here is the supply list of what you need for this project. About 3 or 4 Trader Joe's brown paper bags, things like that. You need a ruler or a straight edge. You need a Sharpie or some kind of marker. Some kind of tape, just plain old Scotch tape, or it can be masking tape, anything like that. Scissors, and I'll tell you this is because I am a sewing snob. I have one pair of junky scissors that I'm going to cut paper with. And then I have a pair of my good sewing scissors that I tie a ribbon on so that nobody in my family uses them, because these are my good sewing scissors. So I like to have 2 pairs of scissors. If you have a rotary cutter, those are always nice, but it's not essential at all for this, but those are kind of nice if you have the rotor cutter and the mat and all that, but that's way above. Then it takes usually 1 to 2 pair of blue jeans to make this apron. 1 if you're of a larger size or using someone of a larger size. I like to have a bunch of them because then I can mix up all my denim colors and things like that. But you know, get your stack. At least 2 pair, I think, is a good idea. You definitely need pins. Your sewing machine, there is a slight possibility, if you are super diligent, of making this by hand. But yeah, I'll see you next year when you finish that one. But so a sewing machine is good to have. And then if you want to do some of the embroidery, hang on, I'm going to switch to speaker view. If you want to do embroidery, you oh, that's weird, I'm getting Anna up there. Anna, can you mute yourself for me?
Yes.
Okay. And if you want to do some embroidery on there, I think you can see, I'm trying to get it back to being me. This is weird. I don't know why it's not. Oh, okay. It's not working for me. I'm not getting me in there. That's okay. So this is a chair that I made, and it's in a similar way. You can't really see it, but it's all pieced denim. Okay. So I'm going to start. So the first thing you're going to do is take apart your brown paper bags, and you just tear the little tops off, you know, the little handles if you have them. You tear it open and you end up getting big pieces like this. What I do is I just put I put them together like this, so it looks kind of like an apron shape, like that. It's just a big rectangle at the top. It's the 2 big sides and then a small piece up at the top in the middle, like that. Now, if you have an apron, this is even better, because then you just take your apron that you love and you're going to lay it over that like that to get your pattern. If you don't have an apron, then we go with measurements. And I made my pattern in different sizes. Let's see, I'm going to do it this way. So the one thing that you want to know, and you can do this when you're cutting this first piece of paper, is the width can run from 25 to 28 inches across in width. The height all the way from the top of the neck all the way down, and this is when you're laying out your paper on your table, is between 28 and 32, depending on how tall you are. If you want to do this yourself, you can just, you know, take your ruler and say, okay, I want my, you know, I want it to be like this. You can figure that out, or a tape measure works really great for that too. If you want to err on the side of large, that usually is a little bit better than ending up with a little tiny apron. So you want this rectangle to be between 25 and 28 across, between 28 and 32 high, like this. And just because I was saving paper, I put my square up there. So I think, and please let me know if you can't see things. So here is my rough idea of my pattern, like this. So what you want to do so that you can make it symmetrical is you fold it in half, like this. Fold it in half so it looks like this. And then I want to make that swoop that goes across. So I start at this, here I go. I start up here, and I'm just going to do this with my Sharpie, and it's going to look fine because they'll both be the same. I'm going to come down like this, and oh, the one thing I needed to tell you is this distance here from the bottom of your apron to the top of to the top on the side is 18 inches. So you want to measure up 18 inches from the bottom. Put a mark right there. 18 inches up from the bottom of your apron. This is folded in half. And then you're just going to make this gentle sort of swoop mark like that. See that? And you're making it on as it's folded in half, because that way your apron will be symmetrical. And you know what? If it isn't, that's okay too. Then you take your junky scissors and you're going to cut on that Sharpie line. And then you have your pattern like this. See that pattern? That pattern like this. There's your pattern. Okay? Now, you want to have 2 of those. You'll find out in a second. But that is your, and I have this, this is step 1. You make 2 paper patterns. Yeah, I have those. So that when you go back on YouTube, you can say, oh, there's the step. Okay, step 2 is what you're gonna do is start deconstructing your blue jeans, okay? This is actually a ton of fun, but what I like to find first on my jeans is that flat filled seam, that thick double stitch seam. That ends up becoming the tie. It works really well as the tie because it's you know, probably at least 30 inches long on both legs. So what I do is and because denim looks beautiful with raw edges and it gets all soft and fuzzy and we're gonna stitch all our edges, don't worry about having those raw edges. I'm just embracing that. That's part of the deal. So I open up the jeans and I'm gonna take my scissors and cut right around that seam, like that. Oh my gosh, whoever's these. I go to the DAV all the time and get jeans. They go on sale for dirt cheap, especially if they have, you know, a stain on them or something. But anyway, so I just go along like that. And this is also when you can start thinking about what you want your apron to look like, because you can put all sorts of pockets on it. You can make the pockets be part of your design. So this is one inseam, see that? And that's gonna make a perfect tie like this, okay? So while you're deconstructing, like I said, you can start thinking about where you might want things that are on your jeans to be on your apron. So after you cut out that, usually it's the inseam, then you can start getting nice big chunks of fabric like this. See how I'm opening up the jeans now? And there's this really nice big piece of fabric. So I'm gonna cut straight across basically the crotch and underneath the back butt pocket, like that, and I have this nice big piece of fabric. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use the bottom of this leg, and I'm gonna put that on top of my pattern right up here at the neck edge, like that. That seems to work really well, and it also wow, I got super lucky. Ends up being, it goes all the way to the bottom of my pattern. So what you're gonna do, and then the other great thing, besides having the inseam for your ties, is cut off the waistband like that. When you cut off that waistband, that ends up being a great neckband, like this. It's a nice soft thing like that. You can also use this as your tie if you want it to be, because if they were your jeans, they'll probably work. So sometimes you can use the waistband as the tie, you know, that goes around once. So there's lots and lots of options on all of this. So after you get your fabric, kind of, you know, all your different jeans, and I'm pretending that I just cut all these up, then you start laying it down over your brown paper pattern. And you want to make sure that everything is covering up the brown paper, that it goes past the edges of the brown paper. It does help a little bit to have, to have the grain of the jeans going horizontally or vertically, but again, that's not super critical. So I'm going to cut this piece a little bit smaller here and use that. Yeah. So I'm cutting.
Michelle?
Yeah.
When you said having the grain go horizontally or vertically, do you mean all the pieces going the same direction? Is that what you meant?
So grain on the pants is either this way or this way.
Right.
But right now, if you can see this piece, that's going a little bit diagonal. The rest of them, I'm going either up and down or across with the patterns, with the fabric. Is that making any sense?
Does that mean just don't go diagonal? Is that what you mean? Yes.
Michelle, yes, yeah. And it also means you can break every rule that I tell you.
Oh, okay.
Because that's how this works. This is utilitarian, very much inspired by the, you know, aesthetic of Boro and making do and of quarantine life and everything else. So I think if you do end up making this, you'll remember this time of being like this. So I've got a bunch of pieces on here. Can you see it like that? Laid out, and all of my brown paper from my pattern, my first pattern, is underneath, so all of it is covered up. So I know this is big enough. Now what you do is you take that next pattern and you put it on top like this. This is how we get our good design. So you put that on top, you can pin it, or you can just stick a book on it, or, you know, your scissors or something to keep it in place. And then you take your Sharpie or a piece of just sidewalk chalk or any kind of chalk, and you're gonna trace around that pattern so that you have your perfectly shaped apron.
Michelle?
So,
Michelle?
yeah.
Just a reminder, I want everybody to be sure and mute their microphones so there's no other external sounds coming in. That's all. Just
Okay, great. So I've taken my Sharpie and I've drawn the outline of the pattern on there like that. Then before you start cutting though, start pinning. And you want to pin like crazy. Of course, my good pin cushion is over here, so I got to walk over here and get it. You want to pin all of these pieces together. It's always helpful to pin across the way you're going to sew so that you can just sew right over your pin. So you want to pin all these pieces down like that. Believe it or not, this is when we end up, yeah, having fun with all of this later. Some of the places you'll be 2 or 3, you'll be at least 2 layers thick. Oh, another quick reminder, don't butt pieces up right next to each other like that. You want them to overlap at least 1/2 inch so that when you sew down there, you're catching both the above and below. So you're gonna pin all this together. that. Any other questions? Anything else I've missed so far? No, we're doing okay. Okay, after I've pinned all these on, then I'm going to come back and I'm going to cut the edges exactly as I marked them on my Sharpie. Right here, I'm going to show you something that happens sometimes. There's a little bit of a, because of the way women's jeans are made and they end up with this little extra fabric right there, I'm going to just cut. It's going to have a funny little dip. So I'm just going to cut that and then pin that and sew that down so that it's nice and flat when I'm having my apron. There's a lot of things that come about. Now, if you have jeans that have all kinds of neat bells and whistles on them, pockets and things like that, save them. So cut the pocket out like that. That could end up maybe being, I don't know if we can see this. Back. It could be the pocket that you have up here. I'm gonna move my, there we go. Okay, you'll see less of me, but more of the, so you can save the pockets for that. On this one that I have, I ended up putting the piece of the pants that had the front pocket, and I saved that and put that right there on my apron right there. So you can think about all those things. You don't want to sew on the pockets yet. You're just thinking about them though, okay? So I've pinned all this, then I've trimmed it, and you'll find out as soon as you go to pick it up where you forgot to pin it, because I'm seeing that already. And then I'm going to go to my machine. Okay, so this, by the way, is just what we did. Step 3, assembled denim on top of pattern number 1. Whoa, sorry, assembled pattern on top of number 1 and pinned. Then we did step 4, lay the pattern number 2 on top, pin it or just put something to weight it, mark it and cut it to shape. And now we're going over to step number 5, which is sewing all over the apron to connect all the pieces. Okay. When you go to your machine, make sure you have, oh my goodness, I'm going over here. Now I'm going to try to do this and get to my machine. There we go. How do I look like the sewing lady there? Yeah, there's my machine. When you get to this, the first thing you want to know is what color thread you want to use. If you don't want it to show up, use gray or a denim blue. A white is always a nice touch. I put white in there just so maybe we could see what I was doing. That denim yellow is a nice one. You can even do a bright wild color too. So just, make sure the bobbin and the top are the same color, because you're going to be flipping it over and the top and bottom will both be showing. So what I'm doing now is I'm really free-forming and having fun going to be sewing these pieces together. I tend to make everything have like a presser foot edge following my cut pieces, so you're not doing that 5/8 inch, using your guide on here. I just let my presser foot be my guide for what I'm sewing. I set up a pretty long stitch on my machine. It's about a 3, so it's not quite basting, but it's not super tiny little tight kind of stitching. And then you just go along and start sewing, and I just sew right over the pins. As soon as I get to some place, I put my needle down, lift my presser foot, rotate, kind of straighten it out, because sometimes it can get a little bunched up as you're working. This is the kind of awkward but kind of fun thing. Then go along. Because, things never work when you're, go. There we go. So if you have a spot that maybe is weak, or you want something, you can do a fun design, say right here. I'm going to go backwards and forwards and try different sorts of, maybe make some zigzags around. You can go along like that. Yeah. all these sorts of things. Okay, so what you're doing is sewing all these pieces together. Okay, and that is also where it ends up being a lot of fun. I'm going to show you on mine some of the ways that you can do things, and they're attached to everything here. So anyway, well, no, I'm not going to show you that. I'm just going to keep going. So you've sewn all this together, okay? And that's your next step, is then you have this nice, good piece of fabric. And we're going to go back over here and start pinning on our ties and pockets and the neckband, okay? So the ties, and I'm pretending this is all sewn together, you know, just like a cooking class. This is all perfectly sewn together. This step does take a little while. But the ties, what you do is you can just put them, can you guys see that? Right here, pin them on like this, right to the pattern. You're gonna sew those on. Okay, we're gonna have a raw edge all the way around our apron. The way I'm gonna keep that from really falling apart is after I sew on everything, I'm gonna sew all the way around twice, all the way around this, just with a straight stitch. And I'm gonna leave a little bit, and what happens as you wash it, it makes a really nice, soft, raw edge. So, but if you have those 2 rows of stitching, it won't end up degrading and going, you know, and really unraveling and stuff like that. So I'm gonna put my 2 ties over there. Then what I like to do is sew on the one side of the, I like to sew on the button side of my waistband like this. And I'm gonna stitch that down with my machine too. This gets a little hefty, so if you don't have a machine that gets through a lot of weight, don't use the waistband, because the waistband's really thick. What you could use instead is a piece of your inseam, because you're gonna have, if you've got 2 pairs of jeans, you've got 4 inseams. And of course, because I didn't cut up 2 jeans, but you'll have 4 inseams. 2 can be the ties, and one of them can be the neck piece if you don't want to use the waistband. So what I do is I sew it on up here like this, and then on this side, as I'm sewing around, you know, because I'm sewing all the way around, I cut a slit below that sewn edge, okay, right below that. This is after I've sewn everything, which I don't need to show you, but I cut a slit like this, and in order to make my neck piece be flexible and have some adjustment, I pull that through that hole. If you know how to make a buttonhole, that's a great place for a buttonhole. And if you know how to make that, that works. But even for this, it works like that. So then I can just do that and loop it around, and that becomes my adjustable neck piece, like that.
Michelle?
Yeah.
Do you reinforce the slit?
Yes, if you can make a buttonhole,
Then it is. Yeah.
and then that's the greatest way to do it. Because I have this hem right here that I'm using at the top, that's a pretty strong, but you will get some weakness here. So hopefully, you know, your double stitching around all the edges will make it work. I didn't want to get too fancy because buttonholes are kind of a little bit higher end. But if you know how to do that, or if you just want to zigzag around all of it, or even sew a straight stitch all around that slit, that'll reinforce it also. So you've got all that, you've attached your 2 ties, and then you have this really nice body, and your apron's basically done. And this is when it gets to be also the super fun stuff, is that's when you start adding your pockets. One thing I love to do is start thinking about what I want to carry with me. Do I need to have a pocket for my phone? Do I have a hammer? Do I have, you know, like all the different things that you have? You can cut it out of white paper, you know, a pocket. And then you cut it out of your jeans and you figure out where do you want it to be, you know, on your apron. Where does it feel right to have it? So, you know, depending on what you want to carry with you, which these days, just about everything we want to carry with us. You know, if you want a place for your scissors, you could make a nice little loop, you know, for your scissors, like a hammer loop, something like that. If this is your gardening apron, think about what's the size of your shovel? Like, get your little spade and put a piece of paper up to it and cut out a piece of fabric that fits, you know, your spade or something, and sew it right on there. When you sew a pocket on, it always helps if you have a hemmed, I don't have it, a hemmed side, like a hemmed piece right there to be the top of your pocket, like this is, like that. If you don't, I would definitely then fold this over at least once, like that, sew it down, and then put it on so the top of your pocket isn't a raw edge. That can end up being a little bit of a problem when you're putting things in and out all the time. So that's the one time I would say it's nice to fold over and do that. So you can start pinning all your pockets on this. It's also the time you can really start working your design, and you can even just add cool little bits of fabric if you want, that you want just to add. It doesn't even have to be a pocket. You just want it as that patchworky kind of piece, okay? And then you'll get that back in your machine and sew it all on. And then I think you're done. You think you have this, okay? So here's mine. It has my ties that I've attached over there. I put this fancy little thing on top of it just because I had it. These are my husband's jeans, so they had these nice glue stains all over them. On my, I used it was the back stitched part for my, I gotta take this off, for my neck wrap, and it had a zipper on it, and I just kept the zipper because I thought that was kind of fun, so I just kept the little zipper there. I put my Ruth Bader Ginsburg in my to-do pin on it. This is also a beautiful place that you could, before you put the pocket on your apron, you could put it in a hoop and embroider a nice design, like our lovely to-do aprons had. So you can actually, this one I embroidered right on there. Yep, Siobhan's holding hers up too. So you can embroider, and then you can add that onto the, you know, make that your pocket. You can do those sorts of things. Like I said, this one I ended up, this is the side leg. I think you can see this. The side, and so I have a pocket right there right there. That's the front pocket of a pair of jeans. So I incorporated that into my design. Okay. What have I forgotten? Have I lost you all?
I don't think you've forgotten anything.
I went at lightning speed. So I think, does it sort of make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. They're really fun. Don't worry. Like, this is a project that it's an apron. This is not couturier or whatever, you know? This is like the stuff that our armor, I think of our apron as like my armor, my uniform. It's all that great stuff. So, and you can keep adding to it. This doesn't have to end at, you know, at the first time you make it. Just keep adding more pockets, change your belt up, make another pair. You know, we don't need these jeans anymore. We're all living in sweatpants anyway. Turn them into an apron that you can wear over your sweatpants.
Or we can't fit in our jeans.
Yeah, I know. I heard the next fashion statement is going to be elastic. So
That's great.
I know. If anybody has questions, hit your space button and ask. I think that's good.
Everybody's thanking you for all the pocket ideas and loops. So
that's great.
I think
if everybody wants to unmute then, oh, I got done in half an hour. That's not bad. Unmute. You are also welcome. You all know how to get a hold of me on either Instagram messaging or text me if you have any questions when you start doing it. Again, use a hefty needle on your, like at least a 14 needle on your sewing machine so that you can get through all those layers when you're doing things. And the more stitching, the better. The stitching really adds a lot of strength. So really have fun. I know I really blew through that step, but have a good time. Make a lot of zigzags, make a whole new, you're making almost new fabric with the thread itself. So that's a lot of fun. If you have the kind that can do free arm where you take the feed dog off on the bottom and can just roll around, that's super cool too. But that's kind of like fancy stuff. So, I know, fancy stuff. My dog is barking at the door.
Thank you, Michelle.
All right. It was great
Thank
having
you.
you. Thanks, guys. All right. See you for the next one, which is going to be Christine doing listening.
Yeah, on Monday. It's listening to isolation.
Oh, that's going to
Check that out on our website.
Yeah.
And also Instagram, Facebook, wherever we post.
Yeah. Hopefully you all you did all find the link. So that's good. All right. Thanks to my Illinois group. Oh my gosh, my dog is barking. Come on. She's really annoying. She needs to come in here with me because this is her favorite
I'm just
thing.
going to turn the video off now. How about
Yeah, do that.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. See you later.
Bye, thank you.